So we have our GoPro Hero 11 mounted on top of our Avata, and there's a few questions we want to answer here. Number one, does the GoPro footage actually look better than the Avata? If the Avata footage looks better, then the setup is really pointless. So that's the main question. Then on top of that, how does having the GoPro on top affect the flight performance of the Avata? So does it reduce the battery life drastically? Does it cause more tumble? Does it make it fly slower? So I'm going to test all of that out and see whether this setup is worth it or not. Am I the only one who always drops these little thumbsticks? I cannot screw them into the controller, any DJI controller, without dropping them everywhere. I've already lost quite a few and I always have to have spares in my bag. So it was raining, but it has stopped now, fortunately. In the meantime, let's look at our cameras quick. And for the GoPro and the Avata, I'm going to be using full manual settings. And I'm not going to go through them now, but I will put them on screen so that you can see what I'm using. And I'm basically just using the settings that I think give the best results for FPV. And that's going to make this comparison as fair as possible. We are rolling and ready to go. While we watch the sample footage shot from both cameras on this day, I'm just going to run through my thoughts on the actual video quality from both cameras, as well as how the drone performed with and without the GoPro mounted on top. So as you can see from this comparison, the GoPro does actually have a wider field of view, and I think that's simply because the GoPro is using the entire sensor, so it's almost a square, whereas the Avata has to record in a 16:9 format to run at 4K resolution. So while with the GoPro I was able to bring the sharpness down to low, unfortunately as of now it's fixed on the Avata and you can't change it, which is a bit unfortunate because it does give a bit of an over sharpened look to the image in my opinion. If we zoom in a bit further here, you can see that the GoPro is capturing a bit more detail even with the sharpness down, and I think this is simply because the resolution is just that little bit higher. If we look at the color from both of these cameras, the GoPro color does look quite a lot more pleasing in my opinion, and their white balances were set to the same amount. Even so, the Avata is quite a lot colder. On top of that, the GoPro captures 10-bit color, so it's going to be more adjustable in post if you do want to change the white balance or color or add a grade or whatever you want to do with the footage. So to summarize this test, to be honest, the Avata quality is actually really good and it's definitely going to be enough for most people. But overall, the GoPro does deliver a better image in my opinion. So if that's your main concern, then you might want to consider this rig. So since shooting those first tests, DJI of course came out with a new firmware update which really changed what the Avata camera can do. So I decided to reshoot those tests of course, and this time I used the GoPro Hero 11 Black Mini on top because this has the exact same image quality as the Hero 11, but it's smaller and lighter, so it's definitely a better option to mount on top of the Avata. Now I have done all of these tests already, so I just want to comment on the actual flight performance with the GoPro mounted on top. Now it is definitely better with the 11 Mini on top rather than the 11, but the differences are pretty marginal. So what I noticed is that there is quite a lack in performance output when you have the GoPro on top. It's definitely struggling a bit to fly properly, and on top of that you do get less battery life. So it's not an ideal situation, but if you are flying in conditions that aren't that windy and you're not flying that acrobatically with the Avata, then it should be fine. Now in saying that, it's all up to you if you want to take that risk. I personally can't recommend it just because it does lower the performance quite a lot, but it can be done and it is possible if you have the right conditions and you're flying in the right flying style. So these are obviously the new shots shot with the GoPro 11 Mini and the Avata with the updated firmware. And my word, there is a big difference. I am really happy DJI came out with this firmware. So I'm not entirely sure if I was using the ultra wide format for the previous testing on the Avata, but I know I was for this one and the results are really interesting. Even though the GoPro is recording that extra information with the taller sensor, there's no additional field of view benefit from it. So even if you were to crop the Avata footage into a vertical shooting format, it's not any wider on the GoPro, which is crazy because that means that with the 16:9 footage, you're getting all that additional width on the left and right of the frame with the Avata. So that is a massive win for the Avata. Now, my favorite addition in this firmware upgrade is the ability to adjust noise reduction and sharpening. So I put both of them on -2 and I'm really happy with the result. It completely gets rid of that artificial digital sharpening that the Avata used to have, and the footage is so much more cinematic and pleasing to the eye in my opinion. So another addition with the firmware is on the Avata now you can record 10-bit video in 4K 30. And this is really nice because I was always kind of irritated that you could only do 4K 50 or 60 previously on the Avata, and me and many other people just don't want to use that. We way prefer 4K 30. So in case you didn't realize, my entire opinion on the setup has changed with this DJI firmware update. The Avata clearly has a wider field of view, and with the addition of the 10-bit color and the ability to lower the sharpening and noise reduction, I think the image that you get straight from the Avata is definitely on par with what you get from the Hero 11. So in saying that, I personally don't see any benefit in adding a GoPro on top of the Avata if you get your settings right. Because all it's going to do is add extra weight, reduce your battery life, reduce maneuverability, and on top of that, it's going to require a lot more effort in post-production when you need to run the GoPro through Real Steady and all of that. Whereas with the Avata, you're now getting a really great image right out of the camera, and I'm really happy DJI came out with this firmware update.